and welcome to Talking F1. We're a podcast from GP Grandstand that does more or less what that title says. We talk about F1, more specifically we talk about Formula All, meaning Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3 and the W Series. I'm your host Jim Kimberley and I am joined as always by Drive Tribe's Supreme Chancellor of the F1, F2 and F3 tribes, Thiemo Albers-Daly. And we have got Jacob Phillips, who I suspect is going to be chomping at the bit to be talking F1 about Formula 1. And continuing our slightly different format from the last race, we are focusing on one series at a time, so be sure to check out the rest of the GP Grandstand YouTube channel to hear us talking F1 about the W Series and Formula 3. But we have a lot to talk about. The Hungaroring is one of the worst tracks, one of the most difficult to overtake tracks, not generally always a great race, and Martin Brundle skips it. Is he going to be kicking himself after those first few laps, Thiemo? And well, just the bonkers race itself. What a terrific example of Formula One this was. How much did you enjoy Formula One's trip to the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2021?
It was a bit better than I thought it was going to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, we don't generally have boring races in Budapest, but we certainly don't have this every time. So it was. I think it's safe to say that in future polls that'll be near the top of the list of best Grand Prix of all time. I think again, just lots of just everything about it. It's just a lot of commentary. Just listening to it live at the time, you just think you don't normally hear that. You don't normally hear that, just rinse and repeat. And just records you didn't even know about or weren't really aware of too much getting broken, like number of cars on the grid for a race restart or just for a race start. You thought Indianapolis in 2005 or whenever it was with 6 cars was silly. Oh, no. Lewis wants that record as well. He's going to have that with 1 car. So it was mental stuff, but thoroughly loved it.
Yeah, loving it was the name of the game. Jacob, it was bonkers. It was crazy. We've seen Budapest deliver when it rains before. It's only a little bit of rain at the start of this one, but it's certainly delivered. How much did you enjoy this Hungarian Grand Prix?
You know what? I think the Hungarian does get a little bit of a bad name, actually. I certainly remember, certainly in this hybrid era, I think loads of the races actually spring to mind as being pretty good. 2014, obviously, one of Ricciardo's first wins there. He had to overtake Alonso and Hamilton. You had 2015 as well, with both Mercedes having a catastrophic race, and I think Vettel won that one. And certainly last year was pretty entertaining as well. I think 2019, obviously, you had the Verstappen and Hamilton battle. But this year was certainly my favourite Hungaroring race since 2006, if anyone remembers back that far. Jenson Button's first win in the Honda. Martin Brundle also missed that. How many times in the last few weeks have we mentioned about Rain Jim on the chat saying, I'm going to do my famous rain dance this week, and for once it actually paid off with a nice little spattering there before the start. And I did kind of think, as soon as they lined up on that grid that, I'm not feeling too good about Bottas here. We know how well he does in the wet. It's never normally very good. Last time we had a wet start in Turkey, he spun off and, it was a scene from Wii Sports bowling there, wasn't it? Going straight into a number of cars and certainly deserving of that 5-place penalty, that's for sure.
I've got to say, it was one of the neatest crashes I've ever seen, though. It was very kind of nicely done in terms of how you could crash. It was dong, dong, dong.
Yeah, it was almost like synchronized crashing at the Olympics or something.
I did not expect to have Wii Sports bowling mentioned in this podcast, but there you go. We really do.
Was that not on your bingo card?
I will be now. But wow, yeah, what a race. So a little bit of a story time for those listening and watching. That I was flying during the time. This is the first time I've missed a Grand Prix live in, I don't know.
He's never travelling again.
That'll teach me. So I had to fly back into the UK actually, and during the flight the race started, and I went into the whole process of trying to avoid all notifications for the subsequent 6 or so hours before I could actually get around to watching it. So I had the fear, and anybody who's worked a Sunday shift or for whatever reason couldn't watch a race live, you'll probably know what it's like. There was no conversation about the radio being on. We're going to listen to the phone because I've had that spoiled me before back in the day when I used to work on Sundays. But then I got the Formula One app of all apps send me a notification, which I half read and slightly misread, I believe, but I wasn't entirely sure, which said there's a new race winner or a new championship leader. There's a new something after the Hungarian Grand Prix. And yeah, a bit frustrating when I kind of started to figure out halfway through the race that was most likely to say a new race winner. So yeah, it wasn't the ideal way to watch it. And watching it live with Twitter reactions and memes and everything would have been something else, but not to support Martin Brundle with his decision to skip any races. But I thought if I was going to skip one that wasn't Monaco, probably fine to do the Hungaroring, but what a mistake that was. Maybe I should fly more so you all get to enjoy some terrific Grand Prix. But Bottas, is he getting up? Yeah, he cocked up. He cocked up big time. But the conversation, Thiemo, is all on Bottas, and I'm thinking Lance Stroll was awful as well. Like he tried to avoid it by going on the wet grass, which when you're a professional driver, wet grass isn't going to provide any more grip at all, especially going on the inside of turn one. 2 drivers causing, was it 7 or 8 cars in a pile-up, 6 retirements before the race really got going. Can we shout at, I know you like to shout about Valtteri Bottas's ability sometimes, Thiemo, but do you want to shout at Lance Stroll as well a little bit?
No, what are you on about? Me criticising Bottas? Never, honestly. Yeah. But yeah, no, Stroll, that was not big brain time from him on that one. Grass does not make you safer or quicker or any of them, or anything better really. Generally avoid that when you're racing on tarmac. Didn't work out this time either, so it wasn't not his finest hour, and he's not had a great run of races recently, if I'm remembering correctly. So it was another driver where it could have done with a confidence boost before the summer break, and I don't think he got that, to be perfectly honest. And yeah, Bottas, you're expecting me to poo-poo him a little bit, and to be fair, it was his fault. But I think it was kind of one of those things where, okay, maybe a driver with his experience should have been able to handle that situation a bit better, but I think if you go back and look at the footage, once he kind of starts braking, there is nothing really he can do. He's turning the wheel a bit, but it's just not going anywhere. So he's just kind of a passenger at that point, and it's just unfortunate for everyone else that it's lap 1, turn 1. And obviously all the conspiracy theorists will be out saying what a good ploy that was to take out both Red Bulls, but I'd say that's just nonsense, and it was just unfortunate for everyone there, because I don't think Bottas was too happy the fact that he was out straight away in turn 1. I don't. So just a mess. But again, poor Leclerc as a result of that. I mean, Lando is obviously there goes his point streak, which is not the way we wanted that to happen. But on the other side of it, it's funny because then Perez, Bottas and Lando all fighting for P3, and all the points stay exactly the same because none of them could do anything about it. So it just kind of makes that battle a bit more interesting, and whilst they've not got a lot of drivers close to them in the championship standings, it certainly helps to bring that gap down a little bit to maybe buy things up for the second half of the season.
Yeah, the P3 battle, maybe that's more what Bottas is trying to do, to try and even the scores to keep them there rather than get Verstappen out. But no, I don't believe any of these conspiracy theories. Jacob, we haven't seen a messy turn 1 like that for, I don't even know how long it's been.
Grosjean Spa comes to mind, but that was a while ago.
Well, that'll be what? How many years?
2012.
Yeah, so 9 years ago, if that would be the last time we saw anything like it. And then just everything about those first 5 laps was unique. The crashing, the red flag, then the restart, then George Russell being in second place. It was like being in a parallel universe of equality parity between the teams. And we were watching. I can't even explain it. I was just laughing. How about you, Jacob?
Yeah, I'm still pinching myself now. I've never seen anything quite like it. And I do actually remember the start that Thiemo mentioned in 2005, Indianapolis, with 6 cars on the grid. That was bonkers. But, what were Mercedes thinking there? I suppose it might have been a case of, Hamilton was the leader on track. Maybe he didn't have the advantage. Obviously, no cars in front of him pitted, so maybe he thought that was the right decision. But, no, it's just bonkers. They mentioned Russell there in the second place. And I actually saw him, he dropped down the order because I think he did some illegal overtaking.
He was a bit cheeky in the pits. He kind of overtook them on the way out. So
Yeah, highly illegal, but my heart sunk because I thought, that was another engine failure, a puncture. I thought, here we go again. The chance where, 6 or 7 leading cars are out of the Grand Prix here. George Russell's on for points and it just, comes back to bite him. But it was just all on. I can't remember everything that happened. Snowden was up there in P4, Latifi. I'm sure you love that Jim up there in P3, holding up the pack there for a long, long time. You got the famous Trilly train back in the day. Well, maybe that's the Latifi train now, who knows? But certainly a fantastic, crazy start. It's one of those starts you see once every 5-10 years. And you mentioned unique about red flags, Jim. Well, we've had 5 already this season, I think it is, so not so unique anymore.
No, it wasn't necessarily the red flag. It was just the process following the red flag, and then during the red flag, I thought they were going to actually replace the floor of Verstappen's car because of the extensive damage, and Norris having to retire. Devastating to hear that team radio. I actually had to skip through that because it was extremely late when I was watching the race by the time I was able to. So I don't know if there's anything else that happened in the red flag period, but I was doing a little bit of a rain dance, hoping for a late rain dance after the race had finished, hoping for a bit more rain as well to continue the spice because the track dried out extremely quickly. So Hamilton's decision to stay out was nuts. But I saw Fraser Ford from the Inside F2 podcast, a friend of the show. He put a tweet out and correctly said, what would have happened if Hamilton went into the pits as well? Because I believe the ruling is if you're starting from the pit lane, you have to wait for all the cars to pass the pit exit. But what if
just nothing happens for the next 2 hours? They just sit there. Maybe the safety car, they got to wait for the safety car to do a full lap round there.
It just seems like there's not a loophole, but an issue that no one's really thought through. So,
to be fair, they've never really had to deal with that before.
No. Well, yeah, just
so you can't beat that record for race restarts now because what do you have? Half a car starting.
The whole thing was just bonkers, just every bit, and things that you can't imagine seeing is Esteban Ocon somehow leading the race, Latifi being in 3rd place, George Russell saying he'd fallen his sword for Nicholas, which was a great
if
shout.
You couldn't love him anymore, it was just the team radio, just like, oh my days, just give him all the points in the world and all the championships just for that.
Yeah, and shall we briefly, while we talk about everything else that happened in those first few laps, the Kimi Raikkonen doing his public service by inadvertently taking out Nikita Mazepin. That was terrifying, Jacob. We know the FIA don't smile on any sort of unsafe releases. That is as unsafe as you're going to get and could have been awful for some of those pit crew involved.
Yeah, it could have been terrifying. You mentioned the FIA smiling. Do the FIA ever smile, Jim? Maybe that's a question for another podcast, I'm sure. But it's terrifying. You never like to see anyone caught up in those situations. I think you could have it down as saying Kimi Raikkonen took one for the team there, but we'll keep that a little bit quiet. But, I think one of those scariest footages was actually from the Haas pit wall itself. You saw, I think, Gunterstein and one of the sort of the engineers looking around then. It was a bit of a sort of freeze frame shot sort of thing. But yeah, look, really scary, parts flying everywhere. There's mechanics there. We know how dangerous the pit lane can be. Obviously, we've had, Kimi Raikkonen running over his mechanic a few years ago back in Bahrain. We had I think a tyre hitting one of the cameramen from Mark Webber's car in 2013. So, it is dangerous. It's a kind of a separate point I'm sure we've got for another podcast, but it's never nice when a team mistake has to punish a driver, but I guess you win and lose as a team, but very dangerous. And I suppose we know what the rules are with the pit lane and the FIA, and Kimi unfortunately got the penalty that's always applied in that situation.
Yeah,
at least it wasn't Mick.
At least it wasn't Mick. Yeah. And a bit of a shout out to Mick Schumacher as well, holding up a very wounded, admittedly, Max Verstappen for as many laps as did. Then he sort of just disappeared down the order when everyone else decided, you can overtake him. But good.
I did find the team radio from Red Bull amusing when Max did get past him because he was saying not bad for half a car. I wasn't sure if he meant Max or Mick.
Yeah, indeed. But well, yeah, let's talk about another penalty as well. We mentioned there Kimi Raikkonen's penalty, and we've talked about Lance Stroll, but Aston Martin's weekend looking like it was going to be terrific, and then disqualification. So Esteban Ocon and Sebastian Vettel were those leading the race for essentially the duration. Latifi did his best to make sure there was a massive gap behind them, and Hamilton try as he may, and another spirited Hamilton fight back. There was no way that anyone else was going to get involved in that, it didn't look like. And Vettel, try as he may, couldn't get past. The undercut Aston Martin cocked up, basically. Their pit stop wasn't quick enough and they could have really won the race. But yeah, the fuel sample. And I found out after I finished watching it like everybody else did, but I was watching this at 1 a.m. and then I sent a text and somebody said something about Vettel. I was like, what happened there? A fuel sample. So because he stopped his car and him and Ocon had to run back, Ocon, I think, went to the wrong place, so rather than just stopping out on track.
He's not won since 2015, so that's fair enough.
He's a bit confused. But Vettel just running out of fuel. This is one of these rules, like you say, Jacob, with you have to apply the penalty, and it's the same thing, that he was unable to provide the fuel sample, and therefore you get disqualified. But Thiemo, it seems so harsh as well at the same time. I understand it. I kind of agree with it, but God damn, that's heartbreaking.
It is one of those kind of catch-22 things, I feel like, because and again, for another reason, I'm kind of glad he didn't win, because that would take it away even more than I feel like. So I know second place isn't exactly a bad thing to be receiving at the end of the day, but it's still quite nice to keep that. So I think there's a problem I've got with the system at the moment where disqualification you can understand, because obviously it's one of the rules I don't mind as much, but I feel like that wasn't really Vettel's fault from what I can tell, and I feel like if you're going to do anything as a punishment for that, maybe take away the points from the constructors for however many he gained, but he gets to keep his for the driver standings, or something along the lines, or fine the team a stupid amount of money. I mean, I'm sure Lawrence Stroll's got a couple of quid he can spare for that. But yeah, it was harsh, but I can understand. Yeah. So it was really unfortunate, and again, it's interesting in some ways though, because the silver lining being Williams get more points, which I'm always on board for, and the amusing thing of then Kimi gets a point even with the 10-second stop-go penalty, which just touched on that with briefly, because the stewards then making another weird decision where, regardless of what you think about the incident at Silverstone, how the heck is Raikkonen's little Bosch there a worse thing than, or warranting a worse penalty than Hamilton only getting a 10-second penalty, which wasn't even a stop-go in Silverstone. So that's just very, very odd there.
That's safety things, I'd say, from just to be the devil's advocate on it. But I understand your point on it, Thiemo. The disappointment for Vettel was one thing, but his disqualification elevates, you mentioned Ferrari, elevates Carlos Sainz, who is the lead Ferrari driver in the race, with about Leclerc being there, and also the lead Ferrari strategist, Jacob, by refusing to come into the pits, which really tickled me when I watched it. He must have seen how Sebastian Vettel got screwed over and over and over and over last season and decided, no, I've got the pace. Of course, he didn't know everything that was going on with regards to other drivers behind him, but yeah, a really, really good drive from Carlos after quite a disappointing qualifying session.
Yeah, I actually made a prediction at the start of the weekend, like a few people mooted on Twitter, that, the Ferrari go quite well here. Obviously, a lot of people call Budapest and Monaco without the walls, and I thought we saw how well Ferrari did in Monaco, so I thought it'd be similar there. Kind of a shame, really, for him to put it in the wall. Silly mistake, really, in qualifying, putting in P15. But you mentioned about the lead Ferrari strategist and the lead on track and the weekend. He's also the lead Ferrari driver in the championship now, which is a little bit surprising. But I've always backed Carlos and believed he's got the talent to really make it in F1 and really make strides. And yeah, it was really good. I love it when drivers override team. We've seen Ferrari mess up time and time again with strategy. We saw it with Vettel last year, 2018, even when he was going for championships. They were always screwing him over. So I think he saw, the fact that Tsunoda was going to pit first, maybe he could do with a bit of clean air. That certainly put in his strides to the podium. So yeah, it was fantastic to see Carlos Sainz. Shame he couldn't hold up Hamilton, but I think Hamilton was on a charge. But it's great to see him on the podium. As sad as it is for Seb, I'm still happy for Carlos regardless.
Carlos just loves getting on the podium when he's not actually on the podium.
I did think that, wasn't it? The Brazil a couple of years ago, and then he's got Monaco when he did, thankfully, actually make the podium. But
if he ever wins a championship, he's going to do it about 2 months after the race is finished.
Yes. One half of his podium visits so far have all been when he wasn't actually on the podium. So a bit of a weird one for him. But he seems just a driver in the ascent. I really rate him as a driver, and he just seems to be one of the ones that going to Ferrari, going to Leclerc's lair, for want of a better expression, really going into the lion's den, and he's not been shown up at all by Leclerc. Leclerc's lost some points from Monaco, from
So he's essentially had
the
50
Hungarian
points,
Grand Prix.
well, not 50 points, but he's lost out from 2 races, so just from bad luck. So there is that on the side of it.
There is that, but I don't think that Sainz has particularly been outshone that much by Leclerc, and it's a really strong partnership. And I thought, when you looked through the grid, that McLaren possibly had one of the best driver lineups, but I do think Ferrari's lineup at the moment is extremely forward-thinking and extremely strong, and possibly the best in a world where the drivers were racing equal machinery, possibly one of the best in the sport right now. And Sainz is certainly showing.
Find out next year.
Maybe next year could really. I don't know what's going to happen with regards to, is Bottas going to Williams? Is Russell going to go to Mercedes or whatever? Is Nick de Vries coming back? But
Latifi to Mercedes.
It could just be the worst decision, though. We just don't know at this point. Haas could come out with the best car that we've ever seen for 2022. So I don't want to wish this season away, because this has been the championship fight we've been waiting for. And even more so after this, I still think Red Bull, Jacob, you might agree with this, still are the faster team. Hamilton generally goes well at Hungary, but I still think the Red Bull car is faster. But that means the second half of the championship, when we return after the summer break, is going to be rip-roaring. I don't want to wish that away, but I'm still excited for 2022. Who do we think, actually? We're halfway through the season. Sorry, Thiemo, your prediction of Perez is completely out the window. You may disagree.
We're not done yet. 12 races, Jim.
I'll ask it this way then, so you can join in. But Jacob, who's going to finish ahead at this point? Is it going to be Verstappen or is it going to be Hamilton at the end of the season?
Since France, I thought the Red Bull and Verstappen would wrap up both championships, not comfortably, but might have come down to sort of Abu Dhabi or one race to spare. My thoughts have changed entirely now, though. And I still believe that Red Bull have the slightly faster car, but since those Silverstone updates, Mercedes have made strides towards the Milton Keynes squad. I just think that, we've seen it time and time again. How many times have we talked about it? The second half of the season, Hamilton, post-Spa, he really comes into his own. But Verstappen's in sort of unknown territory now. He's never led a championship before this season. So, pressure's going to be on. And 2 races now where he's been pretty much punted out of contention by Mercedes. So it's certainly going to be pressure on for him. I think that Mercedes will win the Constructors just simply by Perez being outscored by Bottas. I'm sad to say it, but I haven't been that impressed with Perez this season, to be honest. He had 2 good races in Baku and France, 2 podiums in a row. And I thought that, he started to get a bit of a measure on Bottas, but not that Bottas will even do amazing. I just think he'll pick up consistently more third places than Perez will, and that's where the championship will go.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations where I think Lewis will still end up on top and get that eighth championship. I mean, Max has pushed him into a corner in some respects, starting from, when was it, Monaco onwards, and that generally doesn't go well for you if you put Lewis Hamilton in a corner and give him only one direction to go, because, I mean, what was it then? They had a 5-race streak, Red Bull, and it's been undone in less than half that now by Mercedes through one way or the other. And when you think about it, it took Rosberg 3 attempts to beat Hamilton in the same machinery. And even then, you could argue that the only way he could make sure he wasn't beaten again was by retiring from the sport. Vettel was dispatched of fairly easily over the 2-year period that he was then competitive in Ferrari. And Bottas has been beaten into submission more or less for the last 5 years, because the closest he ever got to winning the championship on points-wise was in his first year with the team in 2017. So if Max was thinking, okay, now this is going to be not a walk in the park, but I'm going to be the one in control of this, he may have jumped ahead of the queue a bit too soon there, and I don't think we're anywhere near done. And you don't want to go up against anyone. It's going to be Lewis, because he will throw the kitchen sink at it, like he proved with Alonso. I mean, it was a hard fight with Alonso, but he still got past him, and that's one of the most experienced and arguably best drivers that F1's produced.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with both of you, I'm afraid, and I do think Verstappen is still going to somehow emerge victorious, and it's a blip. It's a blip in the season right now between...
You sound in denial, Jim.
No, it's not necessarily denial, but the 2 incidents that Verstappen suffered could easily have happened the other way around. It could have been Hamilton in the wall at Silverstone. It could have been Hamilton with half a car this time round in Hungary. So Hamilton seems somehow to be #blessed and avoid the worst of this. And I don't know what God he prays to for him to get such favour and such luck, and argue you make your own luck. But Red Bull have generally got stronger the further into the season that we go, and it's for a lot of the time it's been Ferrari versus Mercedes in the turbo hybrid area, and we've seen Red Bull always finish the season quite strong, and I just wonder, will they continue that this year? And what point do both of these outfits put all their weight behind a 2022 car? But at the end of the day, as a neutral, I really don't care. I'm absolutely bought into this championship. The best thing for me is Verstappen's misfortunes the last 2 races just to close the championship up again. Because, hey, guess what? If he wins the next time out when we return in Spa before his home Grand Prix, which is going to be a hell of a sight, and Hamilton finishing second, we've got level pegging again. That's perfect. This is exactly what I want to see. I want to see a championship where the championship lead changes hands multiple times throughout the season. That's what we've seen in W Series, and that's what I want to be seeing in Formula One. So long may it continue. But let me just maybe finish.
I'll be happy if I won't mind if Max wins in Spa, because then if Lewis wins in Zandvoort, just to see the look on everyone's faces there and the mental anguish
you're
that
a
will
wind-up
cause
merchant,
drama.
Thiemo. That's what you are, a wind-up merchant. But let me go to something positive, which I think all 3 of us could be really positive about. Jacob, we've got a very old driver in Fernando Alonso who has decades of experience, and he used every single minute of those 2 decades in what I thought was a masterclass of defense on Lewis Hamilton. He locked up on much older tyres. I can't really blame him, but the way he was positioning his car in those first 4 corners, lap after lap after lap. Talk us through how good he was.
Well, that was, for me, certainly the drive of the season. And, Esteban Ocon, for all his talents, has certainly got to be sharing his champagne with Fernando, because without Fernando, there was no way Esteban was going to win that race and Hamilton was going to secure his 100th win. But it was just fantastic, wasn't it? Rolling back the years, it was like he was 24, for his first victory there at the Hungarian 2003. Fantastic performance. He placed all his cars in the right spots. We know it's hard to overtake around the Hungarian, but, we've seen Hamilton overtake there at turn 4, turn 3, and he made light work of Sainz and various other cars. So it was just great to see. And for me, that's the battle that F1's been needing for a long, long time now. I think we were starved a little bit of the Alonso Hamilton here, because Hamilton, always seemed to have the better car once we got into the turbo hybrid era. The Ferrari sort of waned, then Alonso went to McLaren, and we know how bad that sort of that shit box, to use that word again, sorry Jim, but that bad McLaren back in 2015 and 16. So we've always been a little bit starved of that rivalry, but it was so good to see. And to be fair, I never expected to really see it on track this year. I had doubts that Alonso would be able to replicate his previous form. He's 40 now, but he's certainly I think he's doing better than he did on his sort of then towards the end of his last stint there. And the only thing I will say about this now is I'd hate to be Guan Yu Zhou and Oscar Piastri, because, Alonso's not going anywhere. And to be fair, he's proved his worth. And Ocon, I actually thought that, Alpine were a little bit too premature to give him a 3-year deal. Certainly before these races, he was pretty crap, to be honest. He had a crash in Styria, didn't he? And he was just really nowhere. He's being absolutely outshone by Alonso. But now with a win for Alpine and, Alonso showing his talents there again, I'd hate to be those 2 drivers.
That team's last win, by the way, Japan 2008.
Wow, that is something, isn't it? Just how
and that was Alonso, by the way, just in case you weren't sure.
how different the world was back then as well. Nuts. Yeah, I agree. I agree that he wound the. Well, he didn't really even wind the years back. I don't think Alonso's ever been a bad driver. I think Kimi Raikkonen has had slumps. I think Alonso's always been pretty damn good, but he's never had to really be doing that sort of staunch defense for such a high up position for how many years on what was a terrific weekend for Alpine in the end. And yeah, a big round of applause to him. And there's a round of applause for Williams. We mentioned briefly that we had George Russell saying, "I'll fall my sword," whatever the right words he actually used were for Nicholas Latifi. And
if you want to compromise my race to save Nicky, go for it.
That was it. Thank you, Thiemo. But wow, what a weekend for those guys! I wouldn't have been expecting to get a double points finish, let alone a points finish. I suspect the rain would have maybe got them a bit excited. But Nicholas Latifi and George Russell walking off with points. What did we think of that, Thiemo?
Yeah, I mean, your prediction, Jim, of 9 years of Latifi dominance starts here, I think. So, careful what you wish for, is all I will say there. But no, it was just absolutely brilliant from Williams all weekend. Well, not all weekend, rather, in the race. I mean, qualifying, you wouldn't have thought then after George, first time he gets knocked out in Q1 all season, think, oh, God, oh, why, what have we done? to deserve this. And then Sunday just completely brilliant in the best possible way. And kind of ironic in a little way, if not, or a bit funny rather, that Latifi then gets more points than Russell in the end of it after all this bloody hassle to try and get there in the first place. But I don't think any of us mind too much. And I mean, 10 juicy points gets them above both Haas and Alfa Romeo now. And I think Aston Martin's next up the road points-wise. Just going to put that there. And yeah, I mean, you can see how much it meant to everyone. I mean, George in tears afterwards on one of the interviews. I don't know if you've seen that footage yet, but it'll bring a tear to your eye. But yeah, it was just exactly what I wanted, thoroughly deserved, and hopefully we can see that one or two more times at least this season.
We're going to see Williams maybe get a bit more money out of this as well, on the assumption that
10 points, that's a lot of money for them.
Yeah, and on the assumption that Alfa Romeo do finish below them as well for the championship standings at the end of the year, that they're not going to be finishing in last. I just don't know how or when Haas could score points this year, even with a race like this, and they couldn't. Yeah, exactly. That was the race if it's going to happen. Alfa Romeo, Kimi's qualifying just seems to be nowhere. So Williams have really took advantage.
To be fair, he did better than Giovinazzi this weekend.
But even still, he's had to rely on a disqualification to score that point. So Alfa Romeo is sitting on 3 points now. But Jacob, your thoughts with Nicholas Latifi now leading George Russell in the championship and Williams on the fight back with actually scoring 10 points. Who'd have thought?
I was sort of hoping that we get a crazy race like this because, George Russell's been so close in the previous sort of 10 races. And I was starting to think, he's done really well, but maybe he won't grab a points finish. And it's kind of ironic, really, kind of, very reminiscent of 2019, if you remember the German Grand Prix 2019, the only race that Williams scored in that year. And George Russell was, excellent all year in his first season in F1. And Kubica was never really up to pace that season, but Kubica was the one to score that one and only point. So it's just reminiscent of that. I'm not sure George will mind a jot at all. For me now he's assuring for that Mercedes seat next year, and it's as he said, 3 years of hard work absolutely paying off there for Williams. It's he's such a delight. That message that Thiemo mentioned about prioritise Nicky. How often do you hear that in F1? You never hear that, especially in the junior series as well. You never talk about prioritising teammates at all. It's literally unheard of words. So it's just showing that the team player he really is, and potentially, hopefully, a future world champion down the line. But one thing I will mention actually to do with Williams is it's kind of ironic really, because I remember George Russell coming into the weekend saying it'd be I think it's the Hungarian is going to be our best chance of the season. It was the only race, whereby he didn't get out of Q1, and it's the race where he scored points. So that was kind of a bit ironic and a bit funny there. But 10 points now in the championship, Williams, and I can't see Alfa Romeo having the talent, the skill, the crazy race, or the rain, or another Bottas bowling pin incident to score any points.
Help us
this season, or certainly outscore Williams, should I say?
Help us, Valtteri Bottas, your only hope. That's what Alfa Romeo are going to be saying. But yeah, we could talk all about this Grand Prix. Over and over, and barely even touched on Ocon becoming a race winner. Congratulations to him. But maybe in our top 3 and bottom 3, we'll touch on that. Jacob, do you want to tell us who your top 3 drivers from F1 are? I
was actually kind of torn with this one. I kind of thought, should I put Ocon in? But he's a Grand Prix winner. There's only 112 of them in history. Not many faces can say they've won a Grand Prix. So he's part of that fantastic small club there. So winning his first Grand Prix, you've got to include him really. And it's going to be an Alpine double act for my second driver, Fernando Alonso. Ocon wouldn't have won without Alonso, and Alonso turning back the clock, as we mentioned there. Fantastic battle, one for the ages of Hamilton, one that I've certainly been waiting years for. And my third driver of the day, I'm going to have to say, and he won't appear in here maybe ever again, or certainly not many more times this season, but cover your ears, Jim, but Nicholas Latifi.
Well, it's maybe a Latifi, Nissani, Williams lineup next year, eh? That'll be something. And
I'll get you a calendar for the special occasion, Jim. Celebrate it every month of the year.
Oh, could you imagine? Thiemo, please don't follow suit, but go ahead with your top 3.
So I'm going to follow suit and have Alonso as the first driver there, and Ocon, because again, first Grand Prix win, as Jacob said, and it was exactly what he needed, and first time since 1986 that a French driver has won in a French car with a French engine, so that's not too bad either, really. And then I'm going to be cheeky with the third one and use Williams as a whole, because they all deserve credit here for that one, because they just did a brilliant job on Sunday and managed to just finally capitalise on it in a big way, and hopefully we can see more of that in the future. I think also, though, just a cheeky 3.5 shout out to Mick just for doing really well in that half a car.
Yeah, I can emphasise with all of these. I think the only standout driver, I think all three of us are saying this as well, was Fernando Alonso, who was he assisted in the race win for his teammate, but just one of, again, masterclass. That's the only way I could describe it. That was some of the best defensive positioning I've seen a driver put his car over and over, lap after lap. So Alonso would be my top one driver if we're doing one, but we've got top three. And yeah, it seemed a bit of a cop out to go on Hamilton, but that was a fight back after essentially being in the wrong place entirely by, I don't know if it's his decision or not, by being on the grid in first place, which ultimately made him be in last place. So yeah, absolute terrific fight back. And the last lap in particular, where there was no chance he's going to catch up, but he took about 4 seconds out of Vettel and Ocon's
So
lead.
you could see how much Fernando was helping him there, because it was just, I didn't expect him to get anywhere near that, and then he just was there, like, oh, Jesus, right.
Yeah, so fresher tyres, whatever you want to say, helped him, but he still had to drive the car like he did in order to do that. So yeah, massive effort from Hamilton. And I'm going to say Mick Schumacher as well, for the fact that he was able to hold up.
You've mispronounced Latifi there, Jim.
I certainly haven't. I've gone for a good Formula 2 graduate, a champion Formula 2 driver, as he should be. And yeah, I thought Mick was terrific when he had the chance to actually, defend. He was a bit aggressive with Max, which I thought was really great to see. But he's not had much of a chance to show wheel-to-wheel racing, and there's not many tracks where he'll be able to. So it's good to see that he still got it, despite maybe not stretching the legs in the terms of the wheel-to-wheel driving for so long. And my bottom three, I've gone for, unsurprisingly, Lance Stroll and Valtteri Bottas, who made the race what it was, but by some awful wet weather driving. And yeah, the novelty one we sometimes go with was Alfa Romeo's mechanics, because that unsafe release, joke as we may about Mazepin getting taken out, could have been horrific. That could have been debris flying everywhere. That could have hit somebody on the pit wall, could have hit a mechanic, could have hit somebody. Yeah, just don't like to see that. But yeah, so Stroll, Bottas, and the Alfa Romeo mechanics. How about you, Jacob?
So I have chosen Bottas for the replica there. I've also chosen Ricciardo as well. And although he did get taken out in the melee, I think he was taken out by Leclerc and Stroll, but he was just way off it all weekend as well. I know I put him in my top three last week, but I'm really disappointed with him. I'm a huge fan of it. I keep mentioning him sort of. It's the third time he's cropped up in my bottom three now. It's the kind of race whereby, you saw all those sort of top guys get taken out. Norris gets taken out. And we've seen how well he does at the Hungary in 2014. You mentioned in the wet, he secured a victory there. It's the kind of race where you got to think that with that car, and that car is a lot more capable than Alpine and that Aston Martin. It's the kind of race where he could be picking up those sort of rare victories from McLaren, and that's what he's signed to do. And the fact that he didn't even score any points when, both Williams, no disrespect to them, and an Alfa Romeo scoring points, for me, is just not good enough, really, to be honest. And the third one I'm going to choose is the stewards, really. Obviously, we know how, we know it's a hard and fast rule with the fuel samples. We know it's a pretty much an instant disqualification when you can't, eject the fuel there. But it's just as well, summoning Ocon off the race, then we had the sort of the heart in mouth sort of stuff. Would Ocon win the race because he parked up in the wrong place and he was running back? It's just very confusing. It's not good for new fans. It's not enjoyable. It takes the excitement away. And also, as well, quickly on the stewards, they summoned a few drivers there, including Vettel, for their pre-race messaging, which is a whole point for another podcast. But once again, it's just not very good from the FIA and the stewards, to be honest. It's not necessary at all.
Very confusing stuff. I totally agree. And Thiemo, how about yourself for your bottom three drivers?
First one, I've got to agree with Jacob Ricciardo for pretty much all the reasons he outlined there, so I won't waste any other time on that one. Giovinazzi for me in the second spot there, because again, it's one of those races where you need to capitalise as much as you can, especially when you're in one of the lower ranked teams. And again, no offence to him, but if Nicholas Latifi can outscore you by that much, you've probably gone and cocked up somewhere. So that just disappointing with Giovinazzi. And again, okay, Kimi only got a point because of the disqualification, but he was still in the position to be moved up only the one place necessary for it. Mick Schumacher finished ahead of Giovinazzi. I mean, again, that kind of says it all, really. And then third, I'm going to agree with Jacob there. The stewards, just for the decision alone. I mean, I could go on about the stewards a lot this weekend with some of their decisions, but calling Vettel up for the T-shirt, just grow up with that. Christ.
Yes, I feel we're going to very dangerous territory if we go too far down that Vettel route. But I'm well done, Sebastian. Well done a lot of the drivers for standing up the way they have recently, with Lando talking about mental health and Vettel with
you wonder if Vettel would have been called up to the stewards if it wasn't in Hungary. That's all I'll say.
Well, if they're meant to be racing as one, then they should be racing as one all the time. So yeah.
Well, Hamilton was certainly racing as one off the line, wasn't he?
Hey!
He's been waiting for that whole podcast.
Yeah, lined it up. We can't top that. So why don't we call it a day? So yeah, thank you for listening to us talking F all. If you want to hear more from us, Thiemo, where can people find your work?
You can find me here on GP Grandstand, and you can also find me over on Drive Tribe and Instagram. And if you want to see me interviewing various people from the world of motorsport, then search for On the Curbs on YouTube.
And those will be in the description below if you're watching on YouTube, or you'll be able to find those in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast. And Jacob, how about yourself?
Yeah, you can find me as always here on GP Grandstand every week, and over on Twitter at JacobPhil18.
That's great, thank you. Same again, have a look in the description below or check the show notes. And same again for me, you can find my writing on gpgrandstand.com and fortlot.com, and for my satire F1 news, search the F1 week that was on YouTube. Thank you for watching us talking F all, and keep your eyes peeled for the next episode where you can watch us talk F all over again.